So, hey guys, it's Alex McCann here from Altrincham HQ, and we're here at our networking event, Alex and his sisters. And we're joined today by Jane Dowler from, I'm presuming, award-winning restaurant chain, Evuna. But obviously, Jane's had a fantastic journey. So we're here to talk about Evuna 2020, what's happened this year, but we're also talking about the history of what Jane has done over the years, which includes, just in terms of bullet points, it includes marketing for Sony Playstation. It involves obviously setting up Evuna over the past 17 years and having 4 successful restaurants. And it also involves a passion and a business involved around yoga. So we're going to touch on all of those different subjects throughout today's interview. So we're going to start right at the beginning, right at the start of your journey. So you worked with large, obviously huge corporates like Sony. You ran 2 successful businesses for years. So tell us about your background, Jane. Were you sort of a very driven child? Was there anyone early on that inspired you to think, I'm going to do great things rather than just sort of average things?
I'd love to say, I mean, there is people that have inspired me, which I'll tell you about in a second, but I'd love to say that, oh God, you know, from the age of 10, I knew I wanted to run businesses and stuff, but honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to be as a child. I didn't, you know, like some people, like my daughter now, you know, she loves dogs, she wants to be a vet, had no idea, just, you know, I love dancing, I was always quite active, but I didn't have any career in mind. And I just followed the natural progression of, obviously I did my O-levels then A-levels. And then I took a year out and worked at Miss Selfridge, which I don't even know if it's around anymore. I worked at Miss Selfridge in a clothes shop. And then I decided to go back to university and started, because I didn't know what else to do, I just started doing a business degree. But I think it's in the genes, because I think my father and my mother, they both grew up in Toxteth in really, you know, small terraced houses where they shared bedrooms with my aunties and uncles, had a toilet at the bottom end of the yard, you know, really quite poor upbringing. And my father in 1971 started a company called Indepth, which he's actually just sold now. He on the 13th of November, it completes this year. So he was always very driven. He had various businesses. So he was a sheet metal worker. He had a holiday company in the 80s. He had apartments in Marbella, in Tenerife, with his partner from Indepth. And he also had a big share in a company called Quentin's Crisp, which was actually bought out by Walkers. So, you know, he was always a driven businessman. And my mum was very much, I think, the backbone of the family. But then when I was 23, 24, they divorced, sadly. And my mum went on to develop properties, and so she's obviously been a suppressed entrepreneur, because she's been like the wife in those kind of days. So I think it's probably just in the genes, yeah. So then I just decided when I left, I got on a HND first, because honestly my A-level results weren't that good to get on a degree. And then after the first year I did really well in my exams, because I kind of got my head down then. I was 21 when I went back to university. And then I switched to a BA at Liverpool Uni, at John Moores. And then once I finished my BA, I did the Chartered Institute of Marketing postgrad for a year straight afterwards. Yeah, so that's kind of up to where I started working.
Oh, fab. And I mean, I guess the lesson there is obviously, business in the family, but it also, it doesn't matter where you come from. Because when I went to Liverpool last year for Sound City Festival, I went to Toxteth, because Ringo's from there, isn't he?
Yeah.
And you have all the normal top stuff, and then you go to Ringo Street, and it looks fairly poshish street, like the Pink House. And everything else just looks really normal. But yeah, so you did, obviously you said you went late to university, or 21.
Yeah.
And you did this degree in business and marketing, and then you went to work in, I mean, there's a journey which you're going to find out now, but you went to work in marketing for Sony Playstation. So marketing was obviously very different then. Years ago.
Social media.
There wasn't social media when I went to university in what? 98, 99. So I was at university. I think the internet was only just starting then, and the university lecturers knew nothing. So how was it back then when you were at university? How did you go from uni to working with the biggest brands?
Well, at university, I had a couple of part-time jobs. I trained to be not yoga instructor. That was later on. I trained to be a Reebok step. I don't know if anybody remembers Reebok step, but it's a long time ago. And I also did my RSA in exercise to music. So I had a job. Part-time job teaching aerobics. Back then it was like Jane Fonda aerobics, kind of high impact stuff. And I also, my mum worked for a company called Counter Product Marketing, or CPM. And again, back then, like we're talking 94, there was a lot of field marketing was quite big. So I don't know if you ever remember in the supermarket, some people slightly older will do that. They used to give out, there'd be these promotion girls giving you little bits of cheese and things like that. So because my mum worked for CPM, I had some jobs like that, where you kind of did promotion work in supermarkets or opening of shops and things like that. So when I finished uni, I applied. I used to buy a magazine, I don't know if it's still around now, called The Grocer. And that was all field marketing roles. So I applied for a field marketing role, and it happened to be with a company called Aspen Field Marketing, which were based in Maidenhead. And the account that I was put on was a computer games account called Micropose. So they were, I don't even think Micropose exists anymore, but they were PC games, so quite like strategic games on PC, quite boring, well, from my perspective, but if you're into that kind of thing. And my first role, I had a company car. I was the field marketing exec for the Northwest, and I had to go to stores that don't exist again anymore. It's quite sad when you think about it, like Game, Virgin, HMV. So my role was involved in checking the merchandise, training the staff. It wasn't really a sales role, but it was a bit like being a sales rep, to drive around these stores and making appointments with the managers. But really it was more about product training so that they could sell that, Micropose's products better. And then from then, I think I was there about 2 years, I saw the position in the Liverpool Echo for marketing executive at Sony Playstation. Sony Playstation at the time had a publishing arm called Signosis. And I think their biggest brands were F1, they had Formula One brand. They also had a huge game in the 90s called Wipeout, which was one of the first PlayStation games. So I think because I'd worked in computer game industry indirectly, and I lived in Liverpool, I got the job. And it was in Wavertree Technology. So at that time, I had various different roles, from marketing exec. I did a bit of product management, and ended up being the trade marketing manager. So at the time, marketing was all about above the line and below the line. And when we launched a new product, like Formula One 1995 was one of my products I worked on. That was, we had a huge TV budget, lot of above the line advertising in the lifestyle magazines and things like that. And then the rest was focused on trade. So, gondola ends in the likes of WH Smith and all those retailers that have now gone. And a lot of PR, there was like PlayStation magazine, a lot of the, industry press and stuff like that. So I worked on a variety of marketing fields. No digital at that time. Yeah. So, and then I went to, Sony decided to centralise all sales and marketing from, because we had our own arm for Signosis products, which was based in Liverpool. And then they decided to centralise them all down to Marlborough Street. And we got the opportunity to take redundancy or move to London. And I didn't want to move to London. So I took up another role with a company called Infogrames, which was the biggest brands in computer games, where they had the FIFA. So they had the football games, and they also had PGA golf, so a lot of sporting games, but they didn't have a marketing position. So I took up national accounts, which was sales, which I didn't really enjoy, if I'm honest. I enjoyed working for Infogrames. I loved working for Infogrames, but I'm not a salesperson, no. And I think going out, my accounts were Virgin Media, HMV, had Asda, had some big national accounts, but at that time it was getting tougher to get, there's a lot of competition, it was getting tough to get the numbers into retail, so that was quite challenging. And then from then I went to, Infograms got bought out by a French company. So again, same thing, redundancy or move to Lyon, which was where their head office was. So I went to a company called Amaze, which was digital marketing. But back then I moved there as an account manager, got promoted to an account director, which is where I worked right up until we opened Evuna. And there we did, I worked on Procter & Gamble, Toyota Europe was one of the biggest accounts, Department of Education, we had a government account. So we were responsible for taking all the key stage 1 and key stage 2 stuff online. So all this teaching equipment, all the teaching resources that weren't online. But again, digital marketing back then, you're talking, I left in 2003, was mainly like microsites and websites and things like that.
Yeah, so it's very different, wasn't it? It was, I was a journalist in 1999 to about 2007. I remember there was a guy, bizarrely, he was called Tony from Sony, and he used to come and meet you in Manchester. It was like, he emailed you, said, I'm in Manchester next Wednesday, do you want to meet up? And it was all very face-to-face. So he would come with his music journalism I was doing, so a stack of CDs, and he would hand you these pile of CDs, and it was very face-to-face relationships. And he said, like your journey, all went centralised. So the Tonys from Sony's, it all went to head office and so on, and Tony got made redundant. But it was very. So what stage did you go from thinking, well, this corporate world isn't for me, I want to kind of do my own thing, which is obviously, as we know, is Evuna?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was my mum that started Evuna. So my mum had a boyfriend, which I've told some people in the small meeting rooms, called Manuel Evuna. He was from Madrid, and he was, and hence me saying about, my biggest influences probably are my parents, both my mum and my dad, because, whilst my dad was the entrepreneur as I was younger, certainly my mum made up for it when she left him. But so she had a boyfriend called Manuel, and he wanted to, his vision, so Evuna was all Manuel's vision. His vision was to bring in wines from really small family-run vineyards where they handpick the grapes, they don't have any additives, no chemicals. And he felt there was a lot of Spain that the UK didn't really know, because at that time, I guess 2002, 2003, we probably only realised that Spain had Rioja and sherry. That's the only kind of brands that we knew. So he had this vision of bringing this. The concept was called an enoteca. So we wanted to mix shop and restaurant, and in Spain they did that quite a lot. So they mixed retail and restaurant, but back then it wasn't really heard of. So my mum was the investor, and she asked me whether I wanted to leave Amaze and work for them. So that's how it happened. And at the time, mum and I were thinking, at the time, my main account was Toyota Europe. So I was over there every week in Belgium, which is where their head office were. I was working 60, 70-hour weeks. I was 32 when we opened Evuna. So 31, 32. So not that I was running out of energy, but I was, kind of thinking, well, I've kind of been there now, working for Sony. It was just, I went to LA with Sony. We hired out the first Big Brother house for a launch of a game called G Police, and had Jamiroquai playing. So I kind of had a really good 20s mixing work and play. So so I just thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And then what happened was, quite quickly, within a year, Mum and Manuel split up, unfortunately, and there was just Mum and I left. So I had, honestly, it was like probably the steepest learning curve ever. Had no idea how to run a restaurant. And what happened, the concept of shop and restaurant didn't really work. So when we opened on a Friday night in November 2003 on Deansgate, and the restaurant was just packed. Everyone just wanted to come to a Spanish restaurant, and that was it. So, the shop side, within the next week, we'd kind of put more tables in the shop side and develop the menu further, because the menu we opened with also didn't really reflect the concept, because Manuel brought a chef from Madrid, who was amazing, but he did quite fine dine cuisine. So quite quickly I added things like bravas, calamari, gambas, you know, all the things that we like if we go to Spain, and changed it more into a tapas thing. But yeah, those first couple of years were really hard, if I'm honest.
So, I mean, yeah, apart from obviously those initial forays into the industry, you've just sort of talked about it. I mean, the one thing that people see when they see a restaurant is they see a sort of a busy restaurant and they assume that the business owner must be raking it in. But obviously it's a huge financial investment, isn't it? So obviously all the associated costs with it. How long after you started, you said obviously Manuel sort of started and you came in, how long after you started did it take to break even?
2006, we made a really small profit. So we opened in 2003, but it was late 2003. I mean, the main investment, obviously my mum put all the money in. It cost us £250,000 to open. So back then that's, you know, a lot of money. So it took a long time, well, now it's a lot of money, but it took a long time to claw that investment back. And obviously we also made, you know, some huge mistakes, like, I mean, one of the biggest things that I remember, biggest challenges was, and I probably did it 100 times myself because I was working on the floor, we were always focused on, say, customer service. So even me knowing nothing about how to run front of house and back of house, you know, you think if the customers come in, you serve them quick, you make sure they're happy and everything will be all right. But one of the biggest things we did in the first year is we lost a lot of money by not putting drinks in the till. So, you know, and I must have done it myself, like running around on a Saturday night and people say, can I have another bottle of wine? You think, oh my God, I've got to get it them so they've got good service, and they come back and then you put the bottle of wine on the table, you haven't put it in the till. And when we did our stock, we didn't really do any stock control then. Now we have weekly stock control, but you know, at the end of the year, you're like, how can we spend so much on wine and we've only made this much when we're supposed to be, you know, having a 70% GP on it, you know, to cover all the other overheads. So that was one of the biggest things, is just getting used to operations. You know, I had no idea operationally how to run a restaurant at all.
I think that's the thing. A lot of people follow the passion, have this dream of opening a restaurant, as you said, and then you have to learn the business side. I guess anyone on this call is exactly the same. They want to do the business because they love what the idea of the business is, and then they realise they have to do accountancy, HR, marketing, customer service, all these different elements of it. So obviously now coming to 2020, you have 4 restaurants in the Evuna brand. For people who don't know, that's the Northern Quarter, Deansgate, Altrincham and Knutsford.
Yes. So
talk us through the potted history of that, obviously the growth of that, the highs, the lows, and we're going to touch on COVID later.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, from 2003, and we've opened the last 3 quite quickly. 2003 to 2013, we just had 1. And Mum and I were, you know, quite happy running 1. You know, by the time 2008 was a challenge, because obviously that's when the recession hit. But by the time 2010 come, we were kind of running it quite comfortably, didn't have to work very hard, etc., etc. And my husband had my boyfriend at the time had a food business, one of these little we used to call it the silver bullet. I don't know what it's called, those silver caravans. I can't remember what they're called now, but he used to go around to festivals and things like that. So he was in the food area. And when we decided to have children, we thought about, well, he's going to be all over the country all summer. So should we have a look for another site? And we just saw the site it was just, everything's grown organically. We saw the site one day in the corner of the Northern Quarter. It was an old bank. And I said to him, that would make a good Evuna, wouldn't it? And it was only little, so we went to have a look at it, had to get planning. So I think one of the easiest and the highs was opening Evuna NQ, because I can't tell you how well it went. Like we were really lucky because it was a couple of miles from Deansgate. So when we opened, we took half the team over to help open. So operationally, it was really easy. I think we opened in the Northern Quarter at the right time. We were on the edge of Thomas Street, and there was only a couple of restaurants in Thomas Street at that time, but then we're probably in the middle of the Northern Quarter now. So the kind of Northern Quarter's grown out to Edge Street and stuff like that. And it just hit the ground running. That was definitely the high. I mean, I remember we opened it and we had a really hot July that year, and it was just rammed every single day. I mean, it just went from 0 to, you know, where it is now, which was really good. And then obviously we kind of run that for a year. My husband was like, God, this is great. This is really easy. Let's do another. And it wasn't that hard, that easy at all, opening Knutsford. So we had it took a while for us to find the right venue. We had a venue, we applied for a planning in, which is now Edit in Hale actually, and a little unit. It was a rose flower shop. And we've got planning for that, but we had a bit of a disagreement with the landlord on the deal last minute, so we pulled out. So when we found Knutsford had already been taken by somebody else, and it fell through. So the agent rang me back, and that took over a year to get planning again. It's a listed building. We had to get listed building consent. It was dilapidated. We had to put a new roof on it. That was the biggest investment by far, because we completely gutted it and renovated it. And Knutsford, for the first, so a huge learning curve for me was going from out of town. I think I just thought to myself, there's no Spanish in Knutsford. Didn't really do any research. You know, we'll be all right. And the first 3 months trade was amazing. We were like, oh my God, we're going to kill it here. But then it just really went down, because I think in a small town, and it was the same with Altrincham, but we were prepared for it. In a small town, you get everybody. I don't know whether it's just the area as well, especially in Cheshire, everybody wants to get in somewhere. They need to get in the newest place to say that they've been and put it on Instagram and all that stuff. So yeah, the first, until Christmas, we opened in September 2017 there, and we had an amazing 3 months, and then January sales fell off a cliff. So again, huge learning curve to learn how to deal with out of town trends and, you know, peaks and troughs. It's, you know, Knutsford's busy in Easter, it's busy during August. So you've got to get not only the residents of Knutsford, because it's a small town, but how do you attract the tourists that are coming in to visit it and things like that. So completely different marketing challenge there. And then again with Altrincham, that was, we weren't really ready to open another restaurant, but RPS called me, and they had a unit where I think a vegan. What's it called?
It's Eat Kaizen, the healthy eating place.
Kaizen, that's it. Yeah, so investment wise for us, it was a lot less than any of the others, because already had extraction, already been rewired, already had air conditioning. So all those costs, already had toilets. They're like the biggest, the mechanical M&E costs, as they call them, the biggest to open a restaurant, rather than the flooring and the nice seating and things like that. So that was already in. So it was just too much of a good deal, really, to say no to. So, but again, Altrincham has been a real challenge. Not as challenging as Knutsford. Knutsford is very, very challenging with staff, because it's got really bad transport links. There aren't many Spanish people that live, not that I want to hire all Spanish, but it's quite nice to have some authenticity. Nobody lives in Knutsford that's Spanish, and nobody really wants to travel, because they can get a job in the city centre. I mean, I think since the last 18 months, we had a train strike with Northern Rail, so nobody could get home. And now the trains finish at 9 o'clock. So it's really, you know, our head chef from Deansgate is there now, because we don't have a head chef. And we've had to get him a car and things like that, because obviously he hasn't got a car, because he doesn't need one normally. So it's challenging, but yeah. I think I wouldn't change any of it. I mean, everything for me has been, you know, and if we come out of COVID, I think I'll be the leanest businesswoman in the world. That's like now completely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned, obviously you mentioned the highs and the lows, but I guess in terms of what you've done, in terms of the success of what you've done, if you look to say the Northern Quarter business, you're an established business in the Northern Quarter, because the Northern Quarter, you see bars open and they come and go within 6 months. Yeah. And even Altrincham, since you've been in Altrincham, I can't think of any specific examples, but I'm pretty sure there's been restaurant or hospitality businesses that have opened and closed in the time you've been there. Yeah. So you're doing something right, clearly. So it's a good thing.
I think what you have to think, and I think naively, I didn't think this when I opened Knutsford and Altrincham, is that it takes a while to make money. So you need to plan for that. So you know, I think it wasn't, in the beginning, it wasn't my money. So my mum probably had all this financial stress of Deansgate. You know, I just went in and did my job. I was general manager, so just went in and did my job. But when we opened Northern Quarter, thankfully we didn't have the financial stress because we hit the ground running. But then when we opened Knutsford, we did have the financial stress of managing the costs versus the sales. And I think that's the biggest thing, you know, I've learned, and especially now during COVID, I am just reducing my costs all the time and looking at ways at how to reduce costs, because I can't get any more sales. Nobody's coming out. You know, it is, yeah. But
yeah, so we'll touch on that now, actually, and then we'll go back to the yoga after this. But obviously, you just mentioned COVID. It's obviously 2020 has been the hardest year for so many businesses. You obviously were in business in the last recession.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, how's it been for you? Because obviously you said you've got the Knutsford and Altrincham arm, and then you've got the city centre, and there's been lots of talk in the press about it being the city centre elements that are struggling. Is that the case for you? How's it been for you this year?
It's been I mean, since reopening, it's changing constantly. So I feel like I can't plan a strategy at all. I feel like you almost be very reactive. So example is, we opened in July at probably, depending on the branch, between 60 and 70% sales. We decided not to open Deansgate in the daytime because Deansgate's very much based on offices. So, you know, the big corporates, St. John Street, there's lots of barristers and doctors, none of them are back in. So, you know, there are lunchtime trades. So we just opened in an evening. So Deansgate's at 50% and has stayed at 50% sales. And then Northern Quarter, a little bit again, a complete anomaly, because it was busy to begin with. Still 70% sales, I'd say, July. And then August, we were up to about 75, 80. I mean, the problems I've got with Northern Quarter is because of the social distancing measures you've got to put in place. It's a tiny little branch. So we've gone from 55 covers to 30. So I can't do the turnover, no matter, you know, it's impossible to do the turnover that we need. But with the Northern Quarter, the landlord's been amazing. We've got a concession till next March. They've given us a really good discount on rent. So I think what they've thought is we want to keep our tenants rather than, you know, wait till the end of, I think there's the forfeiture moratorium ends the end of January or the end of December now. So I think they've just thought they're going to support us. So, and the city centre, both city centre landlords have supported us. So we're all right. But Altrincham mixed, because we started off all right, about 60% sales. We jumped to between 70 and 80 in August. September went back down to 60 as expected, but October's really fell off a cliff. I mean, we've got I think the rule of 6 has helped in Knutsford. I'll talk about Knutsford in a minute, but we haven't got any bookings at all this week. So we've got 2 people booked in on Friday night, which is like, I mean, whether we'll get more today after, you know, all the yesterday's announcements, but, you know, so Altrincham covers have dropped from 78 to 45. So again, we're not going to do the same, you know, we can never do 100% turnover on last year, it's impossible. But we were doing all right in September, and I think just all the talk about, obviously it's growing and everybody's worried, etc., really has affected Altrincham. So last week I took the decision to close daytimes in Altrincham, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're open Friday. We're open evenings, but we're open Friday day, Saturday, Sunday day. And we did the same sales. We did have a little bit of an uplift at the weekend. I think everybody wanted to come out before, because everyone thought we were going to get locked down yesterday. But we did the same sales, and I shaved £1,000 off the wage bill by not opening in the daytime. And we can still take advantage of flexible furlough at the moment. So that's really helped. And then Knutsford, again, surprisingly, has done all right because it's got the rule of 6 up until today. Now it's in the high zone. So looking at, I've took the same strategy in Knutsford. We've reduced the daytime trade so that, again, we can save on costs, because I think that's the only thing at the moment. I have to balance between, you know, whether we do discounts or save costs. But, you know, normally in restaurants, you're probably working at about 30%. Your product is about 30% of your sales price, because you need that 70% to cover your wages, your rent, and all the other overheads involved. And if you reduce to this, everybody was doing 50% off, which I know a lot of people are in the city centre. You've only got 20% left. You've still got your VAT, albeit it's at 5%. But then you've also got to pay, if you're busy, you've got more staff in, so you've got bigger overheads. And so I think my strategy is just to conserve as much cash as we can. The staff, if they're doing 30 hours a week instead of 40, they're still getting flexible furlough, so they'll get 30 hours at full pay, they'll get 10 hours at 60%, so they're all right. You know, they're not overworked. And it's just managing it day by day. You know, I'm looking at I've been talking to other restaurateurs this morning before this sales who have got the 50% offer on in the city centre, and they have had no uplift, no bookings this week. So it's just nobody's in the city centre. And they were saying to me last week, has reducing trade hours worked? And I was like, well, it has for us because we've reduced the costs. Yeah. But, you know, obviously I think we're all trying to hold on till March. That's what we're trying to do, is hopefully in the spring that, you know, that the cases will get less. And I think we're in for a really tough winter, to be honest.
Yeah, so I mean, did you learn lessons from the last recession? Because I remember the last recession, I was working, Altrincham HQ just started, and I was running my events business, and my income on the events business went down to 20% of what it was. I still managed to get through that, but was there any lessons from the last recession to this one, or was it totally different beast?
No, I think cost control is, because, you know, what we did in 2008, I always remember Mum and I working Monday nights together. And I remember one Monday night, like just having two people, I don't know where people came from, but it was absolutely heaving on a Monday night, which is, you know, unusual. And we ran around like, you know, like absolutely, bearing in mind, you know, my mum's 22 years older than me, so back, you know, she wasn't spring chicken either. But we did it at the end of the night, and we thought at 10:30, oh my God, we've done it. So I think, you know, cost control, we also used to have people like the manager in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and also waiter in at 10 o'clock in the morning. So in 2008, we made it all waiters come in at 11:30. So that extra hour and a half every day, because most staff, apart from management in our business, are hourly paid. So, I mean, the labour is the biggest cost. The labour, traditionally in a restaurant model, you will be looking at 30%. I reckon most of us at 40-45 at the moment. So I think, you know, controlling that labour cost is the biggest thing, but it's also about balancing it with, you know, staff morale, because obviously you've got, not luckily, but we've had quite a big fallout because we have a lot of Spanish staff during COVID. So it's been easy for me to reduce everybody's hours because we just haven't recruited.
Yeah.
So people are still on full time. Whereas if we hadn't had that fallout and you know, we still had the same staff as what we had in March, we would have had to make redundancies, which would have been really sad. And we've avoided that so far.
Yeah, so fab. Yeah. So two questions left. Obviously, we're going to divert from Evuna for a second. 2012, you also found the time whilst running the restaurants to set up a yoga business.
Yes.
Tell us more about that, because I wasn't aware of it. So
yeah, so I've always, I mean, Bikram opened in the city centre, I think 2007 or 2008. And I did, before that, I dabbled in yoga. I've always, you know, I train 5 days a week, so I've always tried to keep fit. And when Bikram opened, I thought I'd try it. And I was I remember the first class I did. I don't know if anybody's done hot yoga, but it's, you know, 40 degrees, boiling hot. So the first class, you feel sick. It's so difficult to do. But I came out, stood on the corner of that, wherever road, it's in the northern quarter by Athletics Palace, and went into a shop and bought a can of full fat Coke, which I never drink because I felt that shaky. But I felt amazing. So I just got hooked on the heat. I think I was really inflexible. Couldn't touch my toes when I started Bikram. But I think the sweat and the heat and the different, not only in my flexibility and the toning of my body, but also in my mind, because it was so challenging to do that hour and a half of Bikram. And it was a bit like going to an army camp. You know, probably know it's a scripted yoga class. So I did Bikram religiously for about a year, I'd say, 3 to 4 times a week. And then I kind of started looking into other areas of hot yoga because I got bored of the Bikram sequence, because the same 26 postures twice every time you go. And I found a lady called Ali Hill, and she has a group now of yoga studios. She had one at the time called Yoga Haven, and she was a Bikram teacher, but she believed that any yoga in the heat would be good. So, you know, the heat helps your muscles be more pliable, more relaxed. So she did different styles of yoga, different postures. So I went on one of her retreats in May 2009, loved it, in Morocco, and then signed up for her teacher training in September 2009. So I qualified January 2010, and then just started teaching part-time. Then I was teaching from 2010 to 2012 at local studios in Liverpool. And then I was on a yoga retreat in June 2000, and probably June 2010 actually, and I met a lady called Nisha, who's a Pilates teacher, and she was looking for a space in the city centre, and there was a large space above Evuna, which I knew about, which is now the Life Centre, if anybody goes to yoga in the city centre. And we both decided to open it together, put half the money in. She'd do the Pilates, I'd do the hot yoga, applied for planning. In the meantime, unfortunately, I got pregnant. Well, not unfortunately, fortunately, I got pregnant with my daughter here. But so I think the reason why I don't have the yoga business now is that we opened in 2012, and I did find it incredibly difficult. Sophia was born in May 2012. So to have a baby, the restaurants, the yoga business, it was really, I was teaching 10 classes a week. It was really tough. Luckily, the restaurants we only had Northern Quarter and Deansgate then. My husband took over the Northern Quarter running, and my mum did Deansgate. So, you know, I had time to look after the yoga studio. I mean, I'm glad I've done it, but I think I almost had a breakdown. And then I went, but I love yoga, I practice yoga. I go to a class, I live in Wilmslow, so I go to a local studio now, do 3 classes a week. I'm still in the heat. You know, and I've gone from being like not being able to touch my toes at 36 to being able to do the splits at 49. So, you know, and I can handstand, I can do the crab, you know, and all those kind of things. And I think that it's amazing for your mind, not only the body. I mean, I need to do my yoga practice just to switch off, really. And what happened with selling it is that the Life Centre used to hire us they've also got another arm called Yoga Campus, which do a lot of teacher trainings, and they wanted to hire us more and more to do teacher trainings. And I went down to see Elizabeth, who's the director of the Life Centre. She's got a centre in Islington. It's like the oldest yoga studio in London. They opened in 1989, and they're not really a hot yoga fan, which is interesting. They're more traditional, because, you know, hot yoga is like a new fad. And she asked me whether I could do more partnering with them and more teacher trainings, and I just said to her, honestly, I don't think I've got the energy. I just haven't got the energy to do it. And I said I could, this was November 2015, and I actually did a teacher training in New York called Baron Baptiste in August 2015. And it was the hardest 9 days I've ever done. It was really intense training, but I sat on the plane on the way home and thought, I need to sell that yoga studio. I'm just spending a fortune on this teacher training. So I said to Elizabeth in November, you know, if I could sell it tomorrow, I would. And it hadn't worked out with Nisha and I, unfortunately. And she'd gone back she does reformer Pilates, which is amazing, but it's quite expensive, and I don't know why, but in the city centre she wasn't getting obviously for the kind of overheads we had, she wasn't getting the business that she needed. So she'd gone back. I think she's opened I think she might have a studio in Sale and St Helens. She got to a couple of smaller boutique studios. So Elizabeth, within a week at the Life Centre, had made me an offer. I was like, yes. And, you know, the deal was done by January 2016. So, and to be honest, it's like, it's now what I would have always wanted it to be if I would have had the time, because they have Jiva Mukti, they have meditation, they have loads of teacher trainings. They still have the hot yoga, which was my baby. but they also do, you know, all different facets of yoga. And I think yoga, you know, I heard somebody before had laughter yoga, which I've never heard of, which sounds amazing. But I think the goal of yoga is the same, no matter what the discipline is. So whether it's hot yoga, ashtanga, jivamukti, whatever it is, it's, you know, to unite your mind, body and spirits. And, you know, you've got all these other physical benefits, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, for you to go back to your true self. So I think that what Elizabeth's done with it in the Life Centre is amazing, you know, and I still practice there occasionally if I go into the city centre, but mainly when I go into the city centre I have to work now, so yeah.
Oh, fab. So
last question. Journey. I don't regret it. It was a great journey, but it was very tough.
Yeah, fab. So last question, just a brief answer, because I want to open it up to questions. 2021, hopefully more positive than 2020. How do you see 2021 and the story of Evuna adapting?
Well, we to be honest, lockdown for the first month was actually quite refreshing for me, because, you know, the staff's wages, we took the strategy of just conserving all the cash we can. Rightly or wrongly, we didn't pay any rent. Obviously, we're still in the process of agreeing some deals, but we just paused everything. The staff were getting paid. So it was just time to just, you know, have a rethink and think about what we got a lockdown puppy, which was great for my daughter and my mental health, but just have a rethink of what we could do. And my husband and my husband's always wanted to do Shop Evuna, which was the online sales, so we launched that, and we deliver now in cases of 6, minimum 6 has to be in a case of 12, so we deliver nationwide. We partner with Parcel Force, so I think diversification really is key. So we've got the Shop Evuna. We've also launched with Deliveroo with all sites. Unfortunately, they take a huge percentage. So we also have our own click and collect app on the website, and we partner with a company called Appaway that run the technology, which are brilliant. So people can go onto our website and order anything off the menu. We take 10% off for click and collect. And something that's come out of that is supplying offices and doing more outside catering. So I think that's something I'm going to push for Christmas, because we've had, I mean, in the past, we're really good at doing events. So because of the history of the wine and the fact that we import all our own wine, which is unlike other restaurants, I've always done lots of wine tastings, and we've got a team of managers that can do wine tastings for like the likes of Deloitte, KPMG, all the big, you know, Panonis, all the big solicitors, all the big firms used to have wine tastings at Evuna, Deansgate mainly. So we have since September done 2 wine tastings where a manager's gone out, we've took some nibbles in workplaces, which I believe is okay because people are in workplaces. And, you know, so we did one last week. We've got one booked on the 23rd of October. And we're also, as part of Shop Evuna, we're also doing our own online wine tasting. So we've got one on the 23rd of October as well. So I'm hosting it. So it's Zoom like this. The concept is you have to buy a case, which at the moment I'm trying to look at other ways of doing that, because if there's 2 people in a household, it's quite difficult. You don't want to open 6 bottles of wine, and I don't want to, you know, recommend we open 6 bottles of wine in one night. But so what we've done is said, buy the case, we'll send you the tasting notes, we'll send you some food recommendations, like easy things you can do at home yourself, and then maybe just open 2 bottles, because if it's a Friday night, then, you know, hopefully there's 2 of you or 3 of you, if you've got an adult, you know, child, you could drink 2 bottles over the weekend. And then obviously you can take notes and enjoy the bottles, the rest of it in the future. But so on the 23rd, we have, I've got 3 winemakers zooming in from Spain, Ribera del Duero, Rueda and Jumilla, which is near Alicante. So, and they've been quite popular. We're selling about 30 cases a time, which is great. But I'm really going to focus on the outside catering, I think, because we're quite good at that. And we have done in the city centre in the past, we have done lots of office launches, you know, along Deansgate, where customers have just asked us to send some tapas over, because it's quite, we can do like tapas canapes, it's quite an easy food for people to pick. So, but restaurant wise, you know, I don't really know what else to do, because I can't drag people in because everybody's scared of coming out. So it's just about taking our brand out there, I think, at the moment.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's been amazing to hear about your journey. Obviously, Evuna's story, the yoga story, the marketing story. It's been fantastic. So thanks for the interview, Jane. Where can people find out you? What's your website address again?
Evuna.com. You can get everything on Evuna.com. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So anybody wants to link in with me, please feel free. I always accept everybody.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for your time again, Jane.
Thank you.